Hello everyone and welcome to another Dual Universe or MyDU showcase. We are here in front of Factoria, Serenity Shipyard's headquarters and factory. And today I want to show you something very special, which I have been working on for a very long time, which are multifunction displays. This is the Serenity multifunction display, but in order to explain that, let me first delve into another game, Star Citizen. Alright folks, so this is us now in Star Citizen, one of the most beautiful games out there. So this game, as far as I know, has consumed close to $1 billion in funding, and in my opinion, where it shows most is in terms of design. Now these people have actually hired lots of designers. They take care of the coloring and ambience of lighting. Every single panel is done with excruciating detail, and this just creates such a lovely, immersive environment to be in. This is something I would really like to port into DU, which we can actually outsource rather than hiring all these fancy designers. We have all these crazy, wonderful people designing all of their ships in DU, so everyone can contribute. In any case, this is the hangar, and what I want to show you guys are the MFDs, the multifunction displays. So let us go over here, let us interact with the screen, and just deliver this little ship here. There you go. There she is, folks. A lovely ship, another piece of lovely Star Citizen design, and now we also have the hangar work lights turning on again, as it's safe to proceed. So to board the ship, we need to open this hangar. And then our character will just take the ladder. Again, wonderful, luxurious design on the inside here. You even have a interactable coffee machine, which is also something I would really love to see in DU. You have a cup, you have an item, you have wine glasses over here, you have a wardrobe. I can place my cup back here, and I can interact with the coffee machine to actually make a beverage, which will then help sustain my character, as this also has survival aspects, another facet I would love to see imported in DU. Anyways, there's lots of little corners you can interact with within the ship. So you have this new interface here, you can put some items in your wardrobe, you can put on some helmet, I can put off my helmet and store it, I guess, over here, and I can take it off later if need be. In any case, as I take control of my ship over here, what happens is, as I activate it, I think the button was, what was the button? It says it's U. There you go. And now you will see, folks, you have a heads-up display, obviously, but you also have, if I hold F, I can interact with multiple buttons and interfaces across the ship here. Most importantly, what I want to focus your attention on are these displays over here. These are the MFDs, the multifunction displays, as they call it in Star Citizen. What can they do? They can control various aspects of our ship. So I can switch here between shields, weapons configuration. I can put the various weapons in various groups, which will then be activated by various hotkeys. I can change the power management. I can, for example, sift some power off of our shields and put it instead into our guns. So if I have energy weapons, these things will reload faster and or have more damage, and so on and so forth. And you will also see some data in your ship, for example here, EM emissions, which are important for missile trackings. You also see some cross-sectional emissions, which also change depending on where your thermal, where your temperatures are and where your power distribution is. Also items I would love to see in DU, and I think similar items are already implemented in DU. In any case, I can control power management, diagnostics here. I guess I can check my screen for the health status of the various elements. I am discovering this as I'm talking about it because I haven't been in this game for a while now. In any case, there's a lot of items you can do with this MFD. You can also configure your ship over here. You can configure various items, whether you want the ship to auto brake in space or not, to compensate for gravity, whether you want the ship to lower its acceleration so the pilot doesn't lose conscience in high G maneuvers, another feature I would love to see in DU, and so on and so forth. So How does this then look in DU? And here we are back in beautiful dual universe, guys, once again in front of Factoria. We have this lovely starry sky night over here on Alioth, and let me delve right into it. This here is my personal ride. This is the Ray Hercules Mark III. And I have outfitted it now with the latest version of the Serenity multifunction display. So let me show you how this thing works. As I enter the Hercules here, we have this nice entrance section. Check this beautiful golden interlaced marble out. This is the textures we introduced together with Leniver, our overlord and admin of the third verse server here on MyDU or Dual Universe. Really beautiful textures. You will also see the Vavona burl over here. Let me open up the heads-up display so you can see it. This is new textures, and these are new textures. There are more incoming, and I think as we get more, I will also do another video, separate video for those. Here we have the white marble interlaced with gold. Again, another beautiful texture we have introduced over here. But let us go into the helm. As we enter the helm, you'll see the light slowly fade in and now reach full brightness after about 4 seconds. This is also a little nice design choice by me. And over here we have it, folks. This is the first MFD, Serenity MFD, the multi-function display. The pilot has one, the co-pilot is yet to get one, and we have another one. If we enter the conference room over here, as we're flying, we might want to do some business with some guests aboard, and you have another tiny screen over here. Now, as we get back into the helm, the lights fade back in. Now, how does this thing work? You will see the heads-up display. You have one big here, and as I said, another one here, so you can have multiple connected to the programming board. You will see 6 hardware buttons on the left, as well as 6 additional buttons I will get into later on the right side. And in the center, you see an illustration of our ship, the Ray Hercules, inside a big hexagonal window panel. So why do I call these left guys over here hardware buttons? Well, simply because they are actually connected to physical buttons. So you see the hull lights here. It's also connected to this button over here. As I hover with the mouse, you will recognize it says hull lights. If I deactivate this thing, as we move outside the ship, you will see the ship has turned completely dark. It is no longer illuminated by the hull lights. For example, you have one over here, and it has gone completely dark. So if you want to go somewhere unnoticed, you can just deactivate your hull lights. And if I turn those back on, if I go over here and I click those, first of all, we don't want to do a system scan yet. We're getting to that. Activate the hull lights, and you will see our ship is again illuminated by beautiful lights all over the hull. It goes further than that. If I might draw our attention here to this hatch, the golden hatch inset inside the ship. As we go inside again and interact with the MFD, again, we don't want to do a systems check, but I want to activate the left beams, for example, and you see it also illustrates that on the hexagonal tiles over here, and I can also activate the front beams. Again, interactively it shows it, and it also turns on these hardware buttons here, which is why I labeled these hardware buttons before. And if we move outside the ship, you see a large, strong beam reaching out several hundred meters that has opened up behind this hatch over here, and you see this large light. This is a long light M, illuminating at a great distance, and the hatch opening. And the same goes here for this landing helper light here below the cockpit, which illuminates below a large section. And this is in particular if you want to land on a moon, on the dark side of the moon, so you have a great visibility even if coming from afar. And unfortunately in DU currently the lights have enormously limited ranges. So even this medium light here, as I move a couple hundred meters away, it will no longer be visible. So I do hope that we can fix this on the third verse soon, because that would be amazing to see lights that reach out, that stretch out and illuminate sections even hundreds of meters, if not kilometers away, which is something that they should do in the most realistic of scenarios. Anyways, let me again deactivate the front lights and the left beams. We can also activate them all at once. That will just simply activate huge spotlights all over the ship if you need calibrating, or again, if you need landing on the dark side of a moon somewhere. If I deactivate those again, we can now proceed to the hardware buttons. Now, what do the hardware buttons do? They do all sorts of different things. The most interesting part, if I go into flight control, this is the flight control interface that opens up. We can do several things over here. We can change the HUD mode, the hotkeys that we can display, and various additional flight helpers. You'll see two buttons here that say remote and the rest that do not. So for example, if I click on the hotkeys, a list will open up with all the hotkeys from the Arch HUD. I can scroll the list over here, and you'll see various items that, well, for example, if I press Alt-S, this will lock the retrograde. Alt-F4 will activate and deactivate the autopilot. It'll toggle it. Mouse wheel up or down will increase or decrease the thrust, the speed, etc., and so on. Another interesting item, let me proceed straight to the remote buttons over here. We can move into our corridor over here, activate our remote control, and now you will see I am able to move inside the ship with the Arch HUD opening up all around me. You will see the HUD. Now, if I click on my little MFD over here, click on flight control, it is barely readable. But if I click on remote manual, this will lock me in. So now as I press WASD, I can no longer move my character. Instead, the ship will activate its thrusters with those buttons. So if I unfreeze myself, so if I go again on the manual button, I can deactivate that and once again move freely aboard across the ship. So let me go over here where we have greater visibility. And now something that is very fun that I can do, I can click on remote follow. And then I can go out of the ship. Oh, we got a little CPU overload. We're very close to the big factory. But something I can do, for example, is as I move away from the ship, you'll see all of the RCS thrusters light up. But then I can make the ship take off, and I can go for a little walk, let's say down here. And then you'll see the ray will follow me. This is the follow mode. I can move anywhere I like. Let me move onto this wide open space over here where we can bring it back down nicely again. And these are the Serenity shipyards, folks. If ever you're in need of a ship, we have a humongous selection. These are our showrooms. These are the larger ships. Come and visit us and get your dream ship over here. Of course, the ray, let me bring it back down by pressing G. The ray, of course, with this latest iteration of the Serenity MFDs, can be bought here as well. And she's coming down here nicely. There we go. Now, I can board the ship again and turn off our remote because this was just for demonstration purposes.
System shutdown complete.
There we go. Now we have deactivated this remote pilot. A very neat feature. It's also kind of cute to see the ship follow you, but it can also be quite useful if you are calibrating, for example, because these MFDs also work on little wheelbarrows, as I like to call them, which are little platforms you can calibrate your ship from. Now let me move on to the real pilot seat.
Startup
and
complete.
as I'm sitting here, once again, the Arch HUD activates. We have our interactive map here. I have demonstrated, I have made a separate video for this one. So let me get back to my MFD, my Serenity multifunction display. Let me activate flight control here again. The panel reopens. And now one thing that is very useful that I can do is I can open my saved destinations that I have on my data bank. And for example, if I wanted to calibrate my aluminum flower, I would simply click here and the autopilot activates and brings us right to our aluminum flower like so. And I'm doing nothing here, folks. This is the autopilot flying automatically, and we have a speed indicator here as well. And here we are going to the aluminum flower. Another thing that is fairly useful that one can do is if the distances are higher than, say, roughly 70 kilometers, it is actually worthwhile to do a little orbital hop rather than fly to the atmosphere like so. So if you want to do that, you can use this button over here.
Altitude hold enabled.
And since we're too close, this will not do an orbital hop. But if we were far enough, this would just hop into the atmosphere and do an orbital hop to this destination, which goes a bit faster than the 1160 kilometers per hour we're limited to here because of atmospheric drag. So if something happens during flight that is not, that is surprising, and if you need to emergency brake, what you can do is you can press this button over here, BL, which stands for brake landing. The ship will immediately brake and engage into a soft brake landing, as Arch HUD usually does it. One thing you can do here, of course, is you can also deactivate the autopilot or reactivate it.
Autopilot disengaged. Brake landing engaged.
And once again, engage the brake landing, which should bring us down nicely over here between the trees, somewhere here on Alioth. There we go. Nice and soft. What else can we do? We can go back to Factoria, where we came from.
Throttle up and disengage brakes.
Autopilot will start. We just need to disengage the brake. And there we go, flying back home again automatically by using this interface here. And here we are, folks, landed back safely in front of Factoria, Serenity Shipyard's headquarters. We just covered this flight control panel over here. Needless to say, this requires Arch HUD with a custom library, which is optional. I'll get into that as we're doing the Rec Hunt button later on. In any case, flight control, very useful stuff, very useful, very handy for the pilot. I personally use the list all the time. That is why I programmed it. You can scroll through it with the mouse wheel, but you're also free to scroll with the mouse, by clicking these arrows over here. Because as you are sitting in the pilot seat, you will need the mouse wheel for increasing and decreasing thrust on Arch HUD. Now, let us move on to the next panel. This will be the status panel over here. To that end, let me first of all turn off the board computer. You get an information message over here, board computer offline, and you get this across all of the screens connected to this Serenity Shipyard's multifunction display board computer. If I reactivate it, the system would first check for the most vital elements needed. We need a core, we need Wi-Fi, data bank, radar, and it checks for additional non-necessary items over here, and it gives you an overview, and it gives the pilot the option, the user, the engineer, potentially the option to either perform a system scan or not, and it auto-closes after several seconds. So now if I restart this thing, we do get the option to actually click yes, no, we'll just close it. If I click yes, we open this ship status panel over here. Now what do we see over here? We see several central useful informations. Here we have a pie chart with the overall structural integrity of the ship. We have the total number of elements, as well as the total distance traveled, the mass of the vehicle, the number of docked ships. We also see the total atmospheric fuel across all of the fuel tanks aboard. We see the total space fuel tank as well, with nice little animations here on our tanks. Now, in case your ship happens to have taken some damage, we can get into the 2D view over here, and you'll see all the elements of the ship, depending on their total health points. It's bigger or smaller dots. If these elements were to be damaged, they would show up in orange. If they were totally broken, they would show up in red. We can also click on each of the items over here. You will see this is a rare adjuster. If I click on this one over here, this is a manual button. If I click on this one over here, this happens to be a rare military space engine. Next to this information, there are also little squares, and each of these squares represents the fuel tanks. You'll see again the nice little animated box over here, and it tells us that this particular item is a rare optimized atmospheric fuel tank. This one happens to be a large one, which we can see by the amount. It holds a total of 56 kiloliters and is currently 94% full. Now, this panel also shows us the center of gravity, as well as docked ships, if you have any. Here it's hard to see because this is a blue ship, but the light blue dot over here happens to be a ship named Serenity Wheelbarrow. This is this little platform over here. This bad boy here, this is the little wheelbarrow. And if we move this thing across, let's say to the right wing section over here, and dock it over here, we can move back to our multifunction display. And we can request a fresh scan of the data with this little R button over here. You'll see it populates the elements, and it takes a little while because this is a lot of information that the programming board has to communicate to the screen. And you'll see the button is no longer here. Now the button is over here, exactly where our little ship is docked to. However, be advised, this localization of the docked ship only works if you have a matching transponder signature. So here we have the transponder aboard the Serenity, well, aboard the Ray, rather. It has tags. The current tag is just SRT for Serenity Shipyards, and so does the little wheelbarrow out there, and that is how we can read this information in. Otherwise, the data is not precise enough from the radar to pinpoint it nicely on this map over here. Now, we can also check this from the side. You see the ship docked on here, center of gravity nicely in the geometric center of the ship, and all the elements. The elements don't perfectly match up with the picture because I need to take a better perspective of my ship from the side. We can also see it from the front. Looks like this. You see all the elements here. At the extremities we have, what do we have? Rear adjusters. Here in front somewhere we will have a modern screen. Here once again the fuel tanks, and so on and so forth. Once again with the wheelbarrow over here on the right hand side. Now, there is more to this screen, however. If you go over here, you will find a little hashtag button. This opens the filter. We can filter this for various types of elements. For example, I can filter and show absolutely no elements whatsoever. It'll just show the center of gravity, right? If I click on the filter again, I can just show what do we want to see. Let's say we want to see only the atmospheric fuel tanks. Now there are two of them, and the filter shows us only those two right now. I can also remove the Atmo tanks, or maybe keep them and add, let's say, airfoils. Where do we have all the airfoils? We have two arrays of wings below the ship, as well as multiple wings here in those wing sections of the ship. Now, if we want to add, for example, adjusters on top of that, you'll see the ship has plenty of adjusters for great maneuverability on the Ray Hercules over here. And you can filter for all sorts of elements in the screen. It shows 300 elements in total. And so if we want to push our hardware to the limit, we can move this scale upwards, let's say 800 points. And it'll display all the elements of the ship over here. We cannot display all 800 because this ship, the Ray, only consists of, how many was it? Roughly 500 elements, as you see here. But there is more. You can also go into the 3D view and consider your ship in 3D. You can also zoom in with the mouse wheel and make the ship image bigger or smaller and show all the elements with a nice outline of your ship. You can still see the center of mass, the wheelbarrow. You can check whether your center of mass has massively moved. For example, if you have put a lot of cargo in your ship, you can still check the status of your fuel tanks. Zoom in, zoom out as you wish. And once again, if this is too heavy for the render script, you can again go down and say, I don't know, I want to see only 240 points. And it'll display only 240 elements, which makes it a bit more fluid here because we have limitations on our render scripts, and we can zoom in and zoom out as we wish. This is great for diagnosing your ship. It's also great for localizing items on your ship. If I close this 3D view, there is a third panel over here, which is the accelerations panel. This will show your ship from a diagonal top, left, rear view. and it'll show the various axes of the ship. We have a forwards and backwards direction with various thrusts. We have plenty of boosters and hover engines here, so we have amazing 200 meters per square second, roughly 21 Gs of upwards thrust, and very powerful forward engines giving us 8 Gs or 81.2 meters per square second forwards acceleration. You will see also space brake acceleration, atmo brake acceleration. These, however, will only give the information once if you take a seat on our pilot seat, because otherwise this data is not available due to the API limitations. And if I start flying, I should get the data now. There you go. We have 60 meters per square second brake acceleration in space and roughly the same in atmospheric total brake acceleration.
Landing gear deployed.
There is another button here while we're landing. If I click over here, you will see your rotational acceleration, the rotational acceleration along the 3 axes of your ship. If I go over here, I should see it as well. Oh, no, this is R for reloading. That's not what I wanted. I wanted to click on plus. And you will see your inertial tensor. This is a complicated item. I will not get into details here. Suffice it to say, one of the axes currently isn't shown due to a bug in the Lua API. But what we can see is we have a roll acceleration of about 50.3 degrees per square second, and pretty much the same in the pitch acceleration for a fairly balanced ship. Now, this is computed via the inertial tensor, as well as the torque, which has to be inset here via Lua parameters in your programming board, along with some other parameters here. You will see you have torque yaw, torque roll, torque pitch, which can be set if you go into build mode of your ship and you go over here into the axis rotations. It'll say the torque along all the axes of the ship. They aren't always perfectly balanced. Yaw left and right, for example, are slightly different, but you can just take the average value to get the ship's rotational accelerations as well onto this panel. Very useful engineering information here as well. Now, if I close the status panel, we can move on to the next one, which is the cargo panel. What does this do? If I click on the cargo panel, you will see it shows me 2 cargos. The reason being that the Ray Hercules only has 2 hubs, shown over here. And we have a permanent storage, as well as a main cargo. And it also says when the next available scan will be. If there were more hubs, it'll display all the hubs over here in a row. Up to 6 hubs can be shown here. Now, we can show also a detailed view of the contents. If I go into the permanent cargo, now it just did a scan. The next scan will once again be in 30 seconds. These are the Lua API limitations of Dual Universe. But you will see that the permanent cargo currently stores about 18,000 liters of Kurgan-X file, a couple of hundred warp cells, and some vanadium scrap. Always good to have in case you happen to fly into a tree or into the ground too fast. You know, rapid unscheduled disassembly. It also shows the total volume and how filled this item is. If I close this and I go into main cargo, it's still waiting for the next scan, and now it did the scan. And you will see I have purposefully filled this main cargo container with plenty of items in very little quantity, just to show off this functionality here. It shows the complete list of items with icons, with the corresponding icons and the quantity. Now I can scroll here, once again, using my mouse wheel, and it'll progressively load all the icons in the list here. These icons are missing. Matte Viridian plastic, for example, is missing, or powder coat metal beige, and generally powder coat materials are missing. And the reason being that these are the fancy new textures that we added onto the server, and the current Lua API is not capable of fetching the icons from the server-specific data. So this needs to be fixed, and I hope it will be soon. This is something to see with the admin. In any case, you can check your cargo and have even long lists of items in here, no problem. Now, this is the cargo panel. If I close this, I will skip the AGG for now. I'll do this last because this ship currently does not have AGG. But let us move on to the shields. And this is probably one of my favorites. The Ray Hercules usually does not have a shield, but if we go back to the engineering section over here, I have actually stuck a shield generator onto it just for demonstration purposes. Here it is, currently inactive. If I move back to our panel, I can activate it with this button here. It says currently the shields are off, and as soon as I activate it, I get this panel over here. I got the voice information, and we can see the shields outside generated around our ship. Now there's several functionalities here. The shields can have 4 different types of resistance set. It has antimatter, electromagnetic, thermic, and kinetic weapons in this game. And depending on what you get attacked by, for example, if you get attacked by heavy antimatter weapons, you can actually increase your shield's resistances to antimatter. Obviously, the others have to be decreased because you have a finite pool of resistances you can set. And you can confirm this with this button over here that appears as soon as you drag this. And then you have a cooldown, which is a limitation of the shield as soon as you set your resistances. Now, if you happen to take some damage to your shields and the hit points here diminish, you can vent the shields to then allow them to recharge. And as you vent,
Shield deactivated.
a nice little
Shield
animation appears
activated.
for venting. And then once you have vented, you again have a venting cooldown, which is also displayed here, 23 seconds remaining, and displayed down here with the little ventilator that is scratched out. Nicely animated, beautiful interface. This is what MFDs are made for, to interact with your ship. If you click the center button, once again back to the resistances, it will equilibrate your resistances again. If one happens to get attacked by 2 different types of weaponry, let's say antimatter and EM weaponry, I can increase my anti-weapon resistance, I can increase my EM resistance and create this fancy pattern of shield resistances, confirm, and if I walk back to the shields, I will see the corresponding resistances here, antimatter and EM, have been properly set. Naturally, I can also deactivate my shields here, like so.
Shield deactivated.
Voila. Next up, the Rec Hunt. Rec Hunt is very similar to the Autopilot, well, to the flight control panel. The only difference here is that we have slightly different keys. For example, here we have the statistics keys. And had we done rec hunting, which is a game mechanic particular to this server, the Third Verse server, once again, if you haven't been here, please do come visit it. I do believe it's the best server out here for MyDU. And it will just show here a log bar plot of all of your recs you have collected, along with the treasure maps. I think I will do a separate video on that one. Now, to finish off with the AGG panel, let me first go out there and install an AGG on the Ray Hercules to show this off. I have now outfitted the Ray with this gravity generator, along with its 6 pulsars, just stuck them to the wings because I will remove them after this demonstration. The Ray is not meant to have AGG. The Atlas over there has it, but it is not finished, so I will show it with my personal ride, the Ray. Now, what does this do on the Serenity MFD? As the screen boots up over here, you will see it this time detects AGG online. So it does detect the anti-grav generator being connected. So as I open this AGG panel, it takes a second to load, and then we get this panel over here. It is currently rather empty because the AGG is off, as can be read from this button. As soon as I activate it, I get this interface over here. We have the compensation rate over here, which is what the AGG is trying to compensate, whether we're too high or too low. It only shows the absolute value in this box. The compensation can be either positive or negative, depending on whether the AGG is fighting to bring us down or up. Here we have the power of the AGG. Since we are currently landed on the ground, it is not doing anything. Then we have here the current altitude being shown in green, 16 meters above the water, and the target altitude in this red line being 1200 meters. Now, this panel allows interaction with the AGG, so I can move my target height over here. And you'll see currently the Singularity and the target height coincide. Let me make them coincide over here, and I'll explain as we go. Let me take the pilot seat's position.
Startup complete.
Go into the AGG panel here as well. It takes a second for the screen to receive the information. And now we shall target this height of 1200 meters. So we take off. And since we have a rather powerful ship here in the rear, I can just point the nose up, release the brakes, and bam, we are flying up. We are already at 400 meters. I will cut the thrust since we're gonna just drift up to the 1200. And now I engage my brakes and level the ship using the arch HUD over here, set it to 0 meridian degrees, level it like so as well. And now you'll see the little wedge here shows us that we're actually losing height. As we are gaining height, the little wedge would point upwards, showing, you see the wedge is getting smaller and smaller as we lose vertical speed. And now the AGG has caught us in the Singularity at 1200 meters height, and you'll see on the left the target altitude of 1200 and on the right the ship's altitude of 1200. And with that done, I can actually leave the pilot seat and go around, roam in the ship, and we will just remain floating in the air as an AGG does. Very nice functionality over here in MyDU. Something we don't have in Star Citizen, for example. Now, we can do more with this.
Startup complete.
As we are currently hovering at 1200, I can set my target height to increase. Let's say we want to go to, what is this? 2 kilometers. And you will see the compensation rate goes to -15 because we're now fighting against the gravity, and the power increases to 51% with those nice animated boxes. And you will see us gaining height slowly from 1247 to 1256 to now 1264 meters as we slowly go toward that target height. Now, what does this singularity issue mean? It took me a while to understand that as well. You have a target height, which is something that the user sets. Let me lower it here, and you'll once again see the little light blue wedge here as we are moving closer to the set altitude. The singularity can be imagined roughly like this. The AGG sets a target height, which is independent at first of the singularity. Once the two are synchronized, this is when the compensation rates you see on the left here stops. This is when the AGG no longer needs to fight to compensate for the difference between the current height or the target height and the singularity. And once we reach the desired altitude, let me lower it once more so we actually get there a bit faster, like so. Then the singularity and target altitude are the same. In case you happen to fly, well, in case you want to take off from a planet or come from space, it is the singularity altitude you need to target and brake and lower your speed. This is where the gravity will capture you. The anti-gravity, or the gravity zero, so to say, is located exactly at the singularity height. And it is only once you have reached zero velocity, well, vertical velocity in this case, at the singularity, that the AGG will then stop the compensation and catch the ship, so to say. And even if your target's height happens to be 20 kilometers, it is at the singularity that one needs to stop. So now that we have reached the desired altitude of 1600, it once again becomes green. Our color and altitude becomes green because we need a singularity, and it coincides with the target altitude. So let me demonstrate what I just stated. If I move this bar all the way up to like, well, let's say 5 or 6 kilometers, let's say. And now I disengage the brakes. And I start moving upwards towards, what was our altitude target? 6 kilometers. There we go. Now if I move up, flying upwards, we're around 3 kilometers. The altitude, or the atmosphere is getting thinner and thinner. It's at 3%. Now the space engines will engage. Increase speed, and now we're at about 6 kilometers. And so I hit the brakes, and you'll see us stop here at roughly 6 kilometers, 6.1 kilometers to be more precise. We are 200 meters above the desired target altitude. And you will see the Singularity still hovers around here below the 2 kilometer line. And as we are dropping, we want to stop at 6 kilometers. So let me just remove the brakes so we fall a bit faster. And then stop us again around 6 kilometers. You see our vertical velocity is nearly 0, but we still keep falling. We are at -3 vertical velocity, which means we lose 3 meters every second. You can see it perhaps in the top left of the screen. You can also see it in this round indicator on top of the screen from the arch HUD. You can also see that this very ever so slight wedge pointing downwards because we are losing altitude. So this is what I mean. The AGG will not catch us if we stop near the target altitude. We need to stop near the Singularity altitude, which has now risen to 2 kilometers. So let me demonstrate that by pointing us down, dropping us down to aforementioned 2 kilometers where the Singularity sits. Now it's a bit above 2 kilometers, so I have to take care to stop a bit earlier. Meanwhile, we can enjoy the beautiful view as we come in here on Alioth.
Brake engaged.
And now I engage the brake, level the ship. We are at 2.5, Singularity is about a bit below.
Brake disengaged. Brake engaged.
And so now, oops, I put my thrust on. And now we will see that our target, well, our ship altitude and the Singularity altitude should roughly coincide, at which point the AGG engages again and we are leveled and stabilized, and AGG starts pushing us up towards the target altitude. And there we have it. This is how AGG works. This is the Serenity MFD.
System shutdown.
Thank you for watching, and see you next time. See you at 6 kilometers of altitude. Bye-bye.